You don't have a room here, so why don't you just sleep in the lobby like a stray dog? The thud of my husband's luggage landing at my feet echoed louder than the words. I stood frozen in the cold spring wind, the sting of rejection settling deep in my chest. Just a week ago, when Mark suggested this family trip, my heart had leaped with hope. Maybe I thought he was finally starting to accept me as part of the family. I poured my soul into preparing for this trip, thinking it was my chance to be acknowledged. But now I see it for what it is, an illusion. A sudden shove from behind jolted me forward, slamming my shoulder into a marble column in the lobby. "Oh, Anna, you're just standing there in the way," my sister-in-law Gemma sneered, her voice honeyed with mock concern. "Maybe you should curl up in a corner, like the stray dog you are." Her smirk was cruel as she relished my discomfort. Behind her, I saw Mark carefully carrying Gemma's luggage, not even sparing me a glance. "Move to the far corner of the lobby," he said coldly. "Your presence only embarrasses us." With that, he walked away, shoulder to shoulder with his sister, their laughter echoing as they disappeared into the elevator. "Isn't this better than being outside in the cold?" My mother-in-law Heather chimed in, her voice sharp with derision. "Compared to being homeless, the lobby is a luxury." She sauntered past me, her laughter grating and unkind. I stared at the marble tiles beneath my feet, my vision blurred. They had reserved 3 rooms, making it clear that I wasn't welcome. For years, I had endured their cruelty, swallowing every insult and slight. Losing my father had left me yearning for the warmth of family, and I had foolishly believed that if I worked harder, if I became a better wife, they might one day accept me. But now, the ache in my shoulder was nothing compared to the storm raging inside me. Under the chandelier's cold, glittering light, I gripped my phone tightly. Something inside me was breaking, crumbling under the weight of their disdain. I took a deep breath, steadying my trembling hands. "My name is Anna James," I whispered to myself. 35 years old, a full-time housewife. I had married Mark 3 years ago, starry-eyed at the idea of becoming part of a new family. Having grown up with just my mother after my father's passing, I had always cherished the dream of family bonds. Since my 20s, I had been quietly investing in stocks, building up a $5 million portfolio. It was a deeply personal achievement, something I had never felt the need to share, not even with Mark. But everything changed one night in our first year of marriage when he came home, drunk and desperate. Through tears, he confessed to a massive gambling debt, claiming he couldn't repay it on his salary. Moved by his vulnerability, I decided to trust him. I revealed my savings, thinking it might strengthen our bond. The very next day, Mark changed. He bragged to his mother and sister about my financial success as if it were his own accomplishment. The man who had seemed so vulnerable the night before now wore a smug grin, his words hollow with pride. "Anna," he would say each month, "I'm a bit short again. Can you help?" At first, I gave in, convincing myself that marriage was about sharing burdens. But Mark spent the money recklessly, without gratitude or thought. Golf clubs, expensive outings, his indulgences piled up while his resentment simmered beneath the surface. "You're lucky to have a wife as generous as Anna," he boasted to Gemma and Heather, their sly glances betraying their envy and disdain. What they didn't know was that I had quietly been paying Gemma's $1,200 rent for years after Mark begged me to help her. "My mom's struggling," Anna he'd said, his voice laced with guilt. "I feel terrible not being able to do more." It didn't stop there. Heather, too, leaned on me financially. Her comments were veiled in sarcasm, her demands wrapped in the pretense of family unity. "Mark is lucky to have married someone wealthy," she'd say, the words cutting in their simplicity. I endured it all, every insult, every ungrateful demand, because I thought family was worth the sacrifice. My embroidery had been my one solace, a skill passed down from my mother. The cherry blossom piece we had stitched together before her passing hung in my study, a reminder of her love. But even that wasn't safe from Heather's scorn. "Embroidery? Really?" she scoffed once. "Such an old-fashioned hobby, like something a grandma would do." Her words stung, but I knew Heather's resentment wasn't entirely about me. Her bitterness was rooted in her own unhappy marriage, and I had become an easy target for her frustrations. "Anna, you'd never understand," she'd say, her tone dripping with disdain. "Without kids or a job, you don't know what real struggles are." Yes, Anna's so old-fashioned, isn't she? Gemma would chime in, her voice laced with mockery. Rich, but somehow so plain. When the two of them were together, they always managed to gang up on me, turning even mundane conversations into opportunities to jab at me. Mark, as usual, brushed it all off with a vague laugh. He had grown up in a single-parent household, and I knew he would never confront his mother. Sometimes he even joined in, laughing as Heather and Gemma mocked me. When we first married, I believed I could nurture a strong bond with his family. I listened to Heather's complaints, helped Gemma financially, and made every effort to strengthen our ties. In the beginning, things seemed promising. Mark was respectful of my success. Gemma was considerate, and Heather treated me like a sister. But over time, everything twisted. Mark's demands grew incessant, Gemma's dependency deepened, and Heather's bitterness sharpened. I held on, convincing myself they would one day understand and accept me. "Thank you, Anna," Gemma would say, smiling sweetly. "I'll make sure to pay this month's rent by tomorrow." But the money never came from her account. Month after month, I deposited $1,200 directly to her landlord to keep her from losing her apartment. "Mom, are you sure you've handled the rent?" I overheard Mark asking Heather once. "Oh, I'm managing just fine," she replied breezily. "I never want my son to worry about me." Her words stung, knowing full well that she relied on me financially while pretending otherwise. I could never bring myself to tell Mark the truth. The weight of their expectations hollowed me out. Mark's obliviousness, his mother's manipulation, and his sister's malice began to wear me down. Embroidery became my escape. With every stitch, I felt a connection to my late mother, as though her spirit sat beside me, guiding my hands. It was a fleeting but precious comfort. But even that refuge wasn't safe from intrusion. "Anna, why don't we all have tea together? Let's spend time as a family," Gemma would suggest. If I declined, her glare was sharp enough to cut. "How dare you act this way? Aren't we family?" Heather would pile on. "Isn't family important to you, Anna?" Even Mark didn't stand by me. "Why can't you just get along with my mom and sister?" he'd say with exasperation. Their scorn seeped into every corner of my life. What had once been a source of joy, my embroidery, now felt like an indulgence I wasn't allowed to have. Each prick of the needle became a reminder of guilt and judgment. My home, which should have been my sanctuary, was suffocating. One evening, as I sat in silence, Mark approached me. "Anna, I want to get new golf clubs," he said, his tone casual but insistent. When I hesitated, his expression darkened. "Oh, I get it. Someone from a poor background like me doesn't deserve anything nice, right?" And then there was Gemma. Her calls were no longer surprising. "I could really use help with rent again this month," she'd say, her tone feigning gratitude. Without a word, I transferred the payment directly to her landlord. One day, as I made yet another transfer, something snapped. "Mom, is that a new handbag?" Mark's voice startled me. I looked up to see Gemma proudly showing off a designer bag. How could she afford it if she was struggling with rent? The realization hit me like a slap. My support wasn't helping. It was enabling. Mark, oblivious, grinned. "Mom's got the good stuff. Anna, you should treat me too." I found myself questioning why I continued to enable their behavior. I was trapped by a false sense of duty, held hostage by the hope that things might change. Then, out of the blue, Mark suggested something unexpected. "Hey, Anna, let's do something special for your birthday this year. Just the two of us." I blinked in surprise. In our 3 years of marriage, we had never celebrated my birthday together. "I'll plan everything," he said, a rare enthusiasm lighting up his face. "It's your birthday after all." He showed me pictures of luxury hotels, scrolling through his phone with excitement. "How about somewhere nearby, like Napa or Carmel?" I nodded quietly, touched by his sudden effort. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. "It might be better to book it under your name," he added casually. "You know, for credibility." His words gave me pause, but I brushed it aside, eager for the chance to rekindle our connection. As the trip date approached, Mark's behavior grew strange. I brushed it off at first, but 3 days before the trip, Mark came home earlier than usual. His tone made my heart sink. "There's something I want to talk to you about," he said, sitting down with a forced seriousness. "My mom found a restaurant nearby she really wants to try, so I thought it would be nice to invite her along." I barely whispered the question, feeling an uneasy weight settle in my chest. "Why?" "Come on, Anna," She'd love it. It'll be family time. His words were light, but the undertone was clear. Family meant his mother, his sister, and maybe me. Oh, and my sister will be coming too, he added, his hesitation betraying his discomfort. His expression made it obvious. I'd never been the priority. What was supposed to be my birthday trip, I thought, had somehow morphed into a family affair. He tried to soften it, his voice laced with sympathy. My sister's husband and she had a big argument so she could use the break, you know? The rehearsed quality of his explanation only added to my unease. But this was supposed to be my birthday, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and frustration. What's the problem? It's just family. His tone sharpened, blaming me for resisting. So what, Anna? Are you really that against having them with us? His gaze hardened, daring me to argue. I swallowed my response, feeling like another battle had been won, by him. The morning of the trip, Gemma and Heather were waiting by the station as though they'd always planned to come along. Anna, we're all set to go, right? Heather's voice held that familiar taunting sweetness. Isn't this just perfect? A family trip for your birthday. Her words dripped with sarcasm, and with each one, my last ounce of hope crumbled. 3 years of marriage, all my sacrifices, all my hope for a meaningful connection, and this was how it ended up. Waiting quietly on the platform, I closed my eyes, feeling the faint breeze on my cheek. Oh, Mark, I'd love one of those nice lunches. Heather's voice pierced through the quiet, deliberately loud. She looped her arm through Mark's, ignoring me completely. Sure, Mom, I'll pay, Mark said, already focused on them. He held out his hand to me without so much as a glance. I handed over my wallet, feeling the sting of his disregard. I'll have the shrimp stir-fry, just like Mark's order, Heather said with a self-satisfied look as she placed her order. Same for me. Nothing like family enjoying the same thing, huh? Gemma and Heather exchanged smug grins, leaving me on the outside of what was supposed to be my special day. On the train, Mark sat between his mother and sister, with me relegated to a separate seat across the aisle. So Mark, last night was awful. My husband, well, you know how he is, Gemma complained, her voice cutting through the air. I sat quietly, the weight of their words pressing down on me. And Anna, without kids or a career, you wouldn't understand what I go through. True. Anna's got it easy, doesn't she? They both laughed, and Mark gave a small chuckle, as though it was all harmless. By the time we reached the hotel, they had shattered any illusion of a warm birthday celebration. Hello, Mr. James, your reservation includes 2 rooms, the receptionist said. Mark turned to me, a smug smile curling on his lips. Oh, Anna, I only booked 2 rooms. Mom and I will share one, and my sister has her own. Where am I supposed to stay? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There's enough room for you. But hey, the lobby has some comfy couches. Lucky you, right? He grinned, his words dripping with insincerity. Gemma and Heather laughed openly, not even trying to hide their satisfaction. Look on the bright side, Anna. Better here than outside in the cold like some stray dog, Heather mocked. Mark grabbed my wallet again, extracting a few bills. Don't worry, Anna. We'll grab some drinks in your honor. Without a second glance, he walked off with his mother and sister, leaving me standing alone in the lobby. As they left, a strange calm settled over me. It was a turning point. I took out my phone and sent a quick message to a contact. Is there anything we can help with, Miss James? Yes, actually, I responded, a faint smile tugging at my lips. I spoke to the owner, and he assured me I'd be well accommodated. The hotel staff's demeanor changed instantly, recognizing the hotel owner's name. We're terribly sorry, Miss James. Let me alert the manager immediately. I watched as they scrambled to assist me, finally feeling a hint of satisfaction as they upgraded me to the presidential suite. A private dinner was arranged, and I was treated like the only guest that mattered. By the time Mark and his family realized where I was already enjoying a gourmet meal alone in quiet luxury. Mark sent panicked texts, but I ignored them. His growing frustration added to my quiet triumph. For once, I enjoyed my birthday free from their scrutiny, knowing this was the beginning of my freedom. The next morning, I left the hotel as quietly as I had arrived, having settled everything on Mark's credit card. It was time to take my life back, leaving them to deal with their own pettiness. The staff's polite smiles as I departed made me feel more supported than my own family ever had. On the train back, I turned off my phone, not wanting to be disturbed by the inevitable frenzy awaiting them at the hotel. A few hours later, Mark and his family were in a panic. "This has to be a mistake. Just wait a minute." Mark's face went pale as the front desk explained the charges. His realization dawned. His card had maxed out. What kind of woman would do this to her husband? Heather screeched. "She's just shameless. How could she leave us here with this bill?" The hotel staff calmly informed them that they'd be allowed to settle the bill later, a courtesy thanks to my connections. But they had no idea how badly this would impact their social standing. When I returned home, the house was silent. But for the first time in years, I felt at peace. I opened the curtains to let in the fresh spring sunlight and sat down, breathing deeply, feeling a sense of relief. An hour later, the front door slammed open, followed by Mark's furious voice. "Anna, what the hell were you thinking?" he demanded, his anger palpable. His mother's high-pitched voice joined in, followed by Gemma's sneering remarks. They raised their voices, trying to humiliate me into submission. I watched them silently, my expression unreadable. "Why don't we continue this discussion outside?" I suggested calmly, catching them off guard. "You wouldn't want the neighbors to hear, would you?" They paused, realizing the implications of what I'd said. I walked them out, finally ready to confront everything they'd hidden for so long. "By the way," I said, my voice steady, "here's the truth about the support I've given your mother these past years." Mark's expression shifted as I explained how I'd quietly covered Heather's rent for 3 years. "That arrangement is over." Heather's face went pale, her earlier arrogance replaced by desperation. "But Anna, please, you can't just stop like this," she pleaded. "I can, and I already have," I replied coolly. I informed Gemma that her petty posts about me had been well documented and were now shared with her husband, who was already filing for divorce. One by one, they began to understand the weight of their actions and how their dependency on me had led them to this point. A few weeks later, Mark came by to collect the rest of his things. I wore a simple black dress, knowing this was our last goodbye. "Can't we start over?" he asked, his voice pleading. "You spent years treating me like a monster wife." I stepped closer, my voice calm. "Well, I hope you enjoyed it. There's no need for me to act like the villain anymore. This is the end." A few days later, I received a package. Inside was one of my cherished embroidery pieces, carefully wrapped with a note. "From Mark's niece. Apologies." It was a small but powerful reminder that kindness and understanding didn't come from status or force, but from genuine connection. My embroidery classes began shortly after. I poured myself into teaching, sharing what my mother had taught me. Each time I worked, I felt that deep connection to her spirit. I had finally found my peace, not by forcing anyone to be family, but by building my own circle of support and joy, just as my mother would have wanted.